UFC Vegas 102 betting show. We have 13 fights this weekend. I'm Jon Kelly. Let's hear the picks. And we're going to get things started with Jacqueline Cavalcanti, a big favorite at -600 with Julia Avala on the comeback at +440. And this is one I'm not going to spend a ton of time on because on one hand, we have Cavalcanti, who's 3-0 in the UFC, and she's primarily a striker, usually keeps a solid pace on the feet, but she's very one-dimensional. I still have some concerns with her defensive grappling, but I don't think that's going to be an issue in a fight like this where she's going to be much younger, much more high volume, a lot more activity on the feet, and I don't think Avala is really even going to be looking to take this fight to the ground, and I don't think that she'd be able to do so because Avala is somebody that also likes to keep the fight on the feet, that struggles in terms of her grappling, and now she's getting older, 37 years old. She's been looking a little rough lately as well. Honestly, I just think she's outmatched from an athletic standpoint, from a skill standpoint, from a quickness standpoint on the feet. So this is one where I think Cavalcanti is clearly going to be winning the rounds, and I do think it goes to the judges' scorecards, but we're going to say it's Cavalcanti by decision. That's the official pick. Next fight up, we have Walter Walker, a -230 favorite. The comeback on Don'Tale Mayes is +190. And you guys know the drill. We're never betting on Don'Tale Mayes ever again. Haven't for a while. Not going to do it here. I just think this is a guy that so clearly just doesn't know how to win fights. He doesn't know how to win rounds. He doesn't know how to win fights. And then on the other side, in Walter Walker, yes, there's some concerns, particularly with the cardio for Walker, but he's going to have a big wrestling advantage. He's going to have a big grappling advantage. And we've already seen this story play out multiple times against Don'Tale Mayes. If you can take him down, he has no idea how to work back to his feet. He's happy to just lay on his back and lose the fight. And I think that's what's going to happen here. I also think Walker has a chance to find a finish on the mat. We saw that his last time out against Junior Tafa, where he submitted him inside the first round. So this is one where I think it's clearly Walker. And honestly, I think the price is fine at -230. Like, I think that's in the parlay territory, in the -230 range. I think this is all Walter Walker. We'll say it's Walker by submission. That's the official pick. And next fight up, we have the first of multiple UFC fighters making their debut this weekend off this past season of Dana White's Contender Series. We had a few fighters last week in the same boat, and this week as well, there's multiple fighters from that season that earned a contract. First of which is Elijah Smith. He's a -162 favorite. The comeback on Vince Morales here is +136. And Elijah Smith, honestly, I'm not super impressed with. I wasn't coming into that Contender Series fight, and he looked okay. Obviously dealt with some adversity early in that fight, and I think we saw just kind of the limitations of how young he still is in terms of his career. But it's also something where I'm not super impressed with the skill set. I think he's okay for a low-level guy, pretty well-rounded. His boxing's fine. He can go to his wrestling. He has a little bit of a wrestling background and holds a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But I do question at times the cardio, which we saw, be a little bit questionable in that last fight. We've also seen that on the regional scene at times, the times where fights did get extended a little bit. And I don't know if he has the best durability either. Like, even in that Contender Series fight, I don't know. Like, I feel like this guy might have a little bit of quit in him. So there's definitely some concerns on the Smith side, and that's why I would not be advocating to lay the chalk here. And then on the flip side, Vince Morales is just a jobber to me. Like, I can't get excited about this guy. He's basically just a different version of Elijah Smith. He comes from a little bit of a wrestling background, but has basically never used his wrestling at the UFC level. In fact, he's actually struggled at times in terms of his defensive wrestling and defensive grappling. He gives up takedowns, 65% takedown defense. And on the feet, he's a pretty solid striker, but he's very limited. Like, he doesn't have a ton of power, doesn't have a lot of finishing upside. He's susceptible to leg kicks, and he's not a high volume guy either. So it's like, yes, I could see him being competitive here, but he's not a guy that's going to separate. He always fights on thin margins, and I don't like those type of fighters. I think Smith has a little bit more upside, but again, the price, no thank you. It's an easy pass for me. In terms of the pick, it's going to be Elijah Smith by decision. Which brings us to our next matchup as Gabriel Bonfim, the first of the Bonfim brothers fighting on this card. He comes in as a -205 favorite. The comeback on Chaos Williams is +170. and I like the underdog here. There's not many on this card that I like, and I like Williams quite a bit. I think a lot of people kind of thought he was fraudulent coming into the UFC. It's very obvious that he's explosive and he's got clear early finishing ability. 12 of his 16 wins have come by submission. But one thing that's also been evidently clear, even in the UFC and on the regional scene, is that he's very hittable in striking exchanges. His striking is ugly. He has no defense, and he doesn't really have a ton of power, in my opinion, either. So I don't like his striking at all. And I think in this spot where it's like, yes, he's going to be the better submission grappler. Well, how confident are you that he's going to be able to get this fight to the mat? And I think that's the key here, because Khaos Williams, pretty solid takedown defense, going to be a much better striker, much better defensively, and has clear knockout power against somebody that is as hittable as Bonfim. So this is just a fight where I think Khaos Williams not only has the upside to hurt him in the striking exchanges if he can keep the fight upright, but I also trust him more over 15 minutes. So this is one where I like the underdog here. I think it's Khaos Williams. We'll say it's Williams by TKO. That's the official pick. Next fight up, we have Rafael Estevam, a minus 360 favorite. The comeback on Jesus Aguilar is plus 285. And if you guys have been listening to me for a while, you know that I am not a Jesus Aguilar guy. Yes, he's somehow been able to pull off a couple wins at the UFC level, but I don't think it's sustainable whatsoever. Not only has the competition been very low, but it's also like, I just think his path to victory is just so narrow. He's an undersized flyweight, very small for the division, and he basically just has one weapon, and that's his grappling. He's going to pull guillotine at the first opportunity. That's his best weapon. He's got multiple finishes via guillotine, but I think this is also somebody that, because he's so limited, he only defends takedowns at 36%, and he can be controlled on the mat as well. His striking doesn't have much to offer. Sure, he knocked out Shannon Ross, but let's be honest, I can knock out Shannon Ross. And this is just a matchup where Estevam's much bigger. He's going to be able to land takedowns here, and he's just a better grappler as well. He holds a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and while he's in dominant positions on the mat, we've seen him against better grapplers than Aguilar be just fine. So this is one where, even though the cardio is always a concern for Estevam, I just don't think it really matters in this spot. We'll say it's Estevam by submission. That's the official pick. And next fight up, this fight was actually just added yesterday, I believe. We have Jared Gordon, a minus 280 favorite. The comeback on Mashrabjan Rosev is plus 235. I probably butchered his name. I'm sure you guys will let me know in the comments. But this is the younger brother of Nursultan Rosev, and he's making his UFC debut on just a couple days' notice, like I mentioned. And this guy is a bomber, man. On the feet, he likes to throw heavies, and he likes to do so early. Most of his wins have come by knockout over the course of his career, and most of them have come early in the fight. He's rarely fought to a decision, and I think that just speaks to his fighting style. He's very powerful, very explosive, similar to his brother in that sense, but also similar to his brother. I think he struggles very clearly in the defensive grappling realm. Even on the regional scene against some of these really low-level guys, they're able to land takedowns, control him on the mat at times, and I think that's clearly the path to victory for somebody like Jared Gordon, who averages multiple takedowns over 15 minutes, high-level grappler on the mat. And the concern with Gordon, because I do think very clearly he can land takedowns and really just wash this dude on the mat, but the concern with Gordon has always been his durability. And he's been knocked out many times throughout his career, and I think that's just a concern against somebody as explosive as Rosev, who, similar to his brother, we've seen get those big, flashy, just land a big shot early and win by knockout. I think that's very live this weekend. So even though I think the grappling advantage is too much to overlook, and I think Gordon more times than not, uses that edge and realizes it and ends up winning, don't be surprised if I have some sort of, KO1 at a big number on Rosev, just because I think I could see the odds. We obviously don't have prices on it yet, but I could see that being a little bit mispriced in my opinion. But in terms of the official pick, it's going to be Gordon by submission. And next fight up, we have Angela Hill taking on Ketlin Souza. This fight's currently lined as a pick'em. Angela Hill was a small favorite. We've seen some money come in on the Souza side, and I get why, because I think the angle is like much younger fighter, more upside, can push a grappling pace. But I don't think she's going to be able to have much grappling success against Angela Hill. Angela Hill has certainly improved her takedown defense and her defensive grappling over the years. And I think on the feet, Angela Hill's going to be more active and landing more. She's also somebody that struggles to separate and win rounds. So I do think this fight plays out very competitively, but I'm going to side with the veteran despite the age concerns. We'll say it's Angela Hill by decision. That's the official pick. And next fight up, we have Jose Delgado, a minus 290 favorite. The comeback on Connor Matthews is plus 235. And Delgado is another UFC fighter making his debut off the Contender Series this past season. And this dude's a firecracker. You know, he's an 8-1 prospect fighting out of Arizona. He trains at the MMA lab. And he seems to be, you know, I've said this with multiple prospects from the Contender Series in the past. Like he has a Brandon Royval type of style, like very explosive, flashy on the feet, capable of landing takedowns as well. But he's also, because of that reckless style, you know, he can be hit on the feet. He can give up takedowns and be out grappled at times as well. So there's definitely some concerns in his game. But in terms of this matchup against Connor Matthews, I think he's just going to have a very big hardware advantage. And what I mean by that is like just the overall athleticism and explosive power. He's going to be much faster on the feet, much more powerful as well. He can work the body. He can mix in the leg kicks as well. Connor Matthews, while being very tough, that's kind of like his best asset. You know, he can land takedowns and out grapple guys that don't really know how to grapple, but I don't think he's going to have much success in that area here. And I think on the feet, he's just going to be very much outgunned and in danger of getting hurt. So I'm going to side with the debutant fighter in Delgado. We'll say it's Delgado by TKO. That's the official pick. And next up, we have Rodolfo Vieira, a minus 245 favorite. The comeback on Andre Petroski is plus 200. And honest to God, before looking into this matchup, you know, I expected Petroski to be a big dog here. I'm like, ooh, you know, maybe I'm going to have some interest in Petroski. And I don't know why my brain works like that, because I feel like I've done that to myself multiple times. And very rarely does it pay off for me to be betting on Andre Petroski at underdog odds. I know he's on a little bit of a win streak where he was able to kind of lay and pray against some of these other guys that can't really defensively wrestle or grapple. And I don't think that's going to be the case here against Rodolfo Vieira, who is also somebody that I think is just as untrustworthy at times, because on the feet, he's very hittable. It seems like every fight that he's in, he ends up getting, you know, a big mouse on his eye, a big cut opened or something like that. And that's just because he is so hittable. But what the guy does have is a very aggressive style of trying to get the fight to the mat in most of his fights. Yes, there were some like Chris Curtis where he didn't really try to do that because it got stuffed early and then he just kind of gave up. But for the most part, he's very aggressive in getting the fight to the ground where he needs it. And I think he's very likely to be able to do that against Andre Petroski here. Petroski is good when he's putting other people on their back, but not so good when he's getting put on his back. I just have a very strong feeling that Vieira is going to take him down early and put him in danger very early in this fight. I could see Vieira like pretty much instantly getting into mount here and threatening a finish. And Petroski, we know, is somebody that will look for the way out if you show him the door. So this is one where, again, both guys are untrustworthy, but I have to side with Rodolfo Vieira because I feel like he's very likely to get the fight where he needs it and potentially find a finish. We'll say it's Vieira by submission. That's the official pick. And next up, we have the brother of Gabriel Bonfim, Ismail Bonfim. He's a minus 200 favorite. The comeback on Nazim Sadykhov is plus 170. And this is just a fight where, you know, you would probably expect me to be, you know, really hyping up the Sadykhov side here, because you guys know, if you've listened to me in the past, I'm not a Bonfim guy. I have questions about his defensive grappling and among other things. And then on the flip side, I've always kind of liked Sadykhov. I felt like he didn't get enough respect when he fought on the Contender Series, and he ended up coming through in that spot. And he's put on a couple exciting fights as well. You know, he had that comeback victory against Evan Elder where he opened up a big gash with an elbow, and then obviously he fought to a draw against Slava Claus. Back and forth war, both guys getting hurt. But he's somebody that I think needs to make the fight dirty, because I think on the feet here, he is going to be outclassed particularly in the defense department. Sadykhov is very hittable. He can be wobbled as well. And Bonfim's very fast and explosive. 9 of his 20 wins have come by knockout. He needs to keep the fight on the feet. He's going to be much faster on the feet. But if Sadykhov can get inside, land some elbows, clinch up, make it dirty, mix in some takedowns, that's what he needs to do to win this fight. I'm just not 100% convinced that he's going to be able to do that. And I could see a world, more times than not, where Bonfim just kind of, is able to shuck off those takedown attempts, keep the fight at space, and just kind of stick and move over the course of 15 minutes. So it's one where I am still leaning towards taking the shot on the underdog just because I do think Sadykhov is more live than a plus 170 would indicate. And I think the fight plays out competitively. But in terms of the official pick, I'm going to slightly side on the Bonfim side, unfortunately. We'll say it's Bonfim by decision. That's the official pick. And next fight up, we have Edmund Shabazian, a minus 355 favorite. The comeback on Dylan Bucka is plus 280. And this is another one where I talked about it in the Delgado-Matthews matchup. This is another one where I just think the hardware of Shabazian is really just all that he needs to beat a guy like Dylan Bucka here. I know Shabazian has had notoriously known for having cardio issues, having durability issues as well. People just out-grappling him and mauling him on the mat, especially once he gets tired. But while he's fresh, the dude's dangerous, and a lot of those wins came against some of the better fighters in the division. Now he's getting a massive step down against a guy who comes from a wrestling background but really doesn't really know what to do if he can't get you to the ground. And even when he does, he's just looking to lay and pray. I don't think that's going to work unless he's able to extend this fight and make Shabazian work and get tired. And I just don't think he's going to be able to do that. I think Shabazian just kind of bodies him early in this fight and potentially finds an early finish as well. We'll say it's Shabazian by TKO. That's the official pick. Which brings us to our co-main event, and this is another one where I certainly don't like the price, but I do think Zalal is the rightful favorite here. He's minus 395. The comeback on Calvin Kattar is plus 310, and I think if I said those exact words like 4 years ago, you guys would think I was smoking crack. Just because it was like Calvin Kattar, he was up there known as one of the better boxers in the division. And Zalal, got cut from the UFC. But since then, it's been a total 180 in terms of both these guys' career trajectory. We have Zalal, who came back to the UFC, looks like basically just a reborn, better version of the guy that he was previously. He still doesn't have much on the feet, but he's leveled up his grappling. He's shown that he can land takedowns against pretty much anybody, and he's a very aggressive grappler that will push a pace and hunt for a finish, and he's at least capable enough to mix it up on the feet to allow himself to get in on those takedowns. And Calvin Kattar, on the flip side, long layoffs, some injuries, like he just seems like his body's breaking down at this point. On top of that, he's coming off a decision loss to Aljamain Sterling, where he was basically just controlled the entire fight. And I think that's key here because Calvin Kattar, his takedown defense based on the numbers was always pretty good over the course of his career. But you look at the guys that he was fighting, he didn't fight basically anybody that was really looking to take him down or anybody that was capable of taking him down. So I think those numbers were certainly inflated. You saw Aljamain Sterling have no problem in terms of controlling him in the grappling and getting those takedowns, taking the fight to the mat. So that's going to be the difference here in this matchup. I think Calvin Kattar is the better striker, but I think he's just going to worry about the takedowns, end up on his back, and get controlled here. So we'll say it's Zalal by decision. That's the official pick. Which brings us to our main event, as Gregory Rodriguez is a minus 225 favorite. The comeback on Jared Cannonier is plus 185. And we'll start on the Rodriguez side. He's finally getting a little bit of shine here in the main event. And he's coming off a decision win over Christian Leroy Duncan, where it was one of the few times where he fought to his greatest skill set, which is his grappling. He averages over 2.5 takedowns per 15 minutes, holds a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but the knock on him is that he just loves to fight, man. He loves to get in there and swing hands, and that's been to his own downfall because he's been knocked out 3 times in his career, and that's the concern with him, is the fight IQ is not always on point, and the durability is a real concern. So on the flip side, you have Jared Cannonier, who's certainly capable of landing a big shot and putting your lights out on the feet, but I also think he's also past his prime, right? This is a guy that's almost 42 years old. He's on a 2-fight losing streak. This could potentially be the last fight of his career if he loses here, and I think it's very evident that he's lost a step. He's also very one-dimensional, needs to keep the fight on the feet, only defends takedowns around 60%. So I just think that's another avenue that Gregory Rodriguez can go to here. I think Rodriguez is just as likely to hurt Cannonier on the feet, and then he obviously has all the grappling upside as well. So I'm going to side with the favorite here. There's some concerns at this price tag, but I do think he wins. We'll say it's Rodriguez by TKO. That's the official pick. And if for some reason you guys aren't already on Underdog Fantasy, this is literally, I'm not joking, the best way to get in on the action for UFC cards. We have significant strike markets, takedown markets, finishing markets, all available. So be sure to check out Underdog Fantasy, the best way to get in on the action this weekend. That's all I got, guys. Thanks for watching. Best of luck, and we will see you next week.